Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. Doobie-doobie-doo. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati.
All right. Hello. Welcome, everyone. Happy Monday. I hope you had a good weekend. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I have a guest with me tonight. His name is Teddy. What's going on, Teddy?
Hello, Sabrina. By the way, I was watching the intro. I'm like, I know all those people. But I'm amongst friends over here. What's going on, Sab?
Nothing much. A big weekend for news. Couple things we want to talk about tonight. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you guys can see the thumbnail to show you what we're going to discuss tonight. All right, so here we go, ladies and gentlemen. So tonight we are discussing Chris Hedges' message to Krystal and Kyle. So Krystal and Kyle did interview Chris Hedges over the weekend, or I saw it over the weekend. And he has an important message. I have two clips I want to show you from that. We're also going to talk about AOC's meltdown. That happened. What happened with her trip to Florida, and why does this involve Ron DeSantis as well? And we're also going to talk about the conflict that's going on in Ethiopia, which I think needs more attention. There's not a lot of people talking about that right now. And Teddy here is from Ethiopia, so he's going to give us his perspective about this as well. So let me stop sharing. So I'm actually going to get started with the conflict in Ethiopia. So I have an article that I want to show you. Let me go ahead and open that and share my screen here. Okay, so here we go. So why is Ethiopia at war with itself? A year after Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed began a military campaign in the Tigray region, the fighting is moving toward the capital. Both sides are claiming victories, and Ethiopia is at risk of collapse. And you can see the picture here of what looks like an abandoned building. Looks like it has been attacked, actually. So I'm going to read a little bit of this, and then I want to go to Teddy. After a year of conflict that has left thousands dead, forced more than 2 million people from their homes, and pushed parts of the country into famine, the tide of the civil war in Ethiopia has fluctuated wildly in recent weeks. In early November, fighters from Ethiopia's northern region of Tigray surged south towards the capital, Addis Ababa, causing the government to declare a state of emergency. Foreigners fled the country on advice from embassies that warned flights out of the city could be canceled. And here's a map here so you can see the Tigray region. Notice that it's really close to Sudan and also Eritrea. And you can see Addis Ababa is located here a little bit closer towards the middle. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed responded with defiance, first calling on citizens to take up arms to block the fighters' advance, then moving to the battlefront to personally command his troops. In recent weeks, Ethiopian troops, backed by recently acquired armed drones, recaptured 2 strategic towns and reversed the main Tigrayan gains of the previous month. Okay, so and then we go down here and it said, why did Ethiopia's prime minister begin an offensive in Tigray? And I want to go to Teddy because Teddy here is from Ethiopia. And I want to get your opinion about this. Sure. From your perspective, why is this conflict happening in Ethiopia right now?
It's ironic that the New York Times is right. I mean, what a perfect newspaper to pick. The New York Times asking, why is Ethiopia at war itself? It's kind of like saying, why is there genocide in Iraq? Because they're the main ones propagating or promoting these types of clashes. So I'm going to offer an analysis that is not really heard in too many places. What's taking place in Ethiopia is a manifestation really a ploy or a gambit that's being used throughout the whole world, especially here in America. It's divide and conquer at its apogee, at its apex. What they do, actually, I wrote about this in the 1990s when I was in college about the playbook of colonization. In fact, I believe the paper was called the playbook of colonization. And back then I thought Ethiopia was immune to this because we've never been colonized. So I thought, right? And so colonization works this way: you elevate one group, usually a minority within Africa, a minority tribe, and you put them in power. You give them the guns, money, and status, and you tell that group, hey, listen, as long as you kind of stick with us, we'll protect you. We'll give you guns, right? And even within that elevated group, it's only really a minority within that elevated group that's prospering. The rest are suffering. And then they turn around and they give guns and money to the marginalized groups, and they tell them something like this: hey, listen, we're here to help you liberate yourselves, right? We're going to fund your liberation fronts, which is nothing but a front company for imperialism. And we'll give you, guns and ammo almost to give you parity with the government. And all you have to do is just fight. You can fight your way to freedom. And what that ensures, with almost an even match between government and opposition, is a perpetual warfare. And you know who wins in that paradigm? Colonizers, right? Or imperialists. I want to say the West, but Russia and China also play this game, but not to the same level of lethality as the West does. So you have perpetual war, perpetual strife. But now what happens is, if the leader within that elevated group or that tribe does something that is kind of not in line with the West's interests, all of a sudden momentum shifts. The more guns are given to the opposition, and the playing field flips towards the opposition. Now they pick another tribe, and then that tribe gets in power. There's a civil war. A new tribe gets in power, and then let's repeat. The same thing continues. What's going on in Ethiopia is exactly that. You have, for 27 years, you had a terrorist group called TPLF that were chosen at the London conference by people like Herman Cohen, Zbigniew Brzezinski, Henry Kissinger, to be at the forefront. And their job was pretty simple: revive or implement apartheid in Ethiopia. Up until 1991, Ethiopians saw themselves as Ethiopian. We of course we had pride in our cultural identity, like Amara or Oromo, Tigrayan. But first and foremost, we saw each other as Ethiopian. That's why we were never colonized. Italy learned a valuable lesson in 1896 when they tried to colonize us. Ethiopians banded together as one, and we pulverized them. They tried again in the 1930s. Again, we defended ourselves. What they learned is this: we can't defeat Ethiopians on the battlefield. You had to colonize them in their mind. And 1991 was the beginning of that process. And to be honest, it was beginning before that. Haile Selassie started opening that door. The Dirk crack, opened it wide open. And then TPLF basically just destroyed the whole house. And what they did was, instead of having one Ethiopia, they cultivated, ethnic homelands based on ethnicity, right? So now, over 27 years, Ethiopians started seeing themselves as Amara first, or Oromo first, or Tigrayan first, or Somali first. That's what apartheid does. That's the same playbook that the racist apartheid government in South Africa played. They pitted. Apartheid was not about black versus white. It wasn't. It was black versus black. They quote unquote black versus black. I don't even like these labels. They're divisive and derisive. But they pitted the Zulus against the Nkatha, and the Lesothos against the Zulus, right? They carved out homelands, and then they called them Bantustans. And then you had them. I mean, some of the most vicious killing sprees were not necessarily the racist government against Africans or South Africans. It was Zulu against Nkatha. It was Lesotho against Zulu, right? This is what happens when you impoverish people and then you make them hate each other. They kill each other. When there's poverty, people hate people that look like them. So that's what's going on in Ethiopia right now. So Abiy Ahmed in this way and TPLF are no different. They're both being propped up and funded by the West. That's why Abiy Ahmed was given the Nobel Peace Prize before he did anything. Who does that sound like to you? Oh, Obama. so, so, so it's the same playbook. Oh, guess what? They're using the same playbook against us here in America. Here, the elevated tribe is not necessarily a minority. It's quote unquote white people. I don't go by these. I reject the label black and I reject the label white because these labels are nothing but a caste system. They don't describe us. I've never seen a purely white person in my life. They don't exist. If anything, they're closer to like, I don't know, pink, I guess. I don't know. Right. And we're brown. We're not. Have you ever seen a purely black person?
No.
It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. Right. Because purely black, you can't see. You know, and this goes back to, by the way, this is all biblical. In Genesis, it says, before there was light, there was darkness. And then God said, let there be light. So white is the full presence of light by definition. And by definition, black is the absence of light. Now, Sabby, do you believe that you don't have light in you? You know?
No, yeah, that's a good point.
So, you know, and what we call ourselves people of color, who colored us? Like the original mankind, the original human being was my complexion, our complexion. I mean, I'm not trying to be arrogant about these things, you know what I'm saying? But so in America, they do the same thing. They elevate the quote unquote white people and they say, look, people of color, dismissively, white people are doing this to you. And then they go to white people and they say, listen, look, black people are coming after you. We fight each other. Meanwhile, globalists, corporatists, whatever you want to call them, are fleecing us blindly. They're doing the same thing to us in America. So the key to our redemption is to get over our differences and realize black, white, yellow, faith or faithless, gay, straight, all of us are being bamboozled and fleeced the same. Some have it worse than others. But why compete about who has it worse? Why not work together so we can make it better for all of us? So that's what, you know, that's where I stand.
Yeah, for those who are just tuning in, I'm just going to show you my screen here. We're actually talking about the conflict that's going on in Ethiopia, which a lot of people I've talked to are not aware of. And this is the Tigray region here, and this is Addis Ababa. And so Teddy is from Ethiopia, and he's explaining why this conflict is going on. So there's something interesting here, because I'm glad that you compared it to what we have here in the United States. Sure. Because you're right, like they do like go to white people and say, you know, black people are the problem. And then I feel like they come to both of us and say that immigrants are the problem.
Right. That's divide and conquer. Yeah.
So it's just like they have to have someone else to blame it on. And Professor Wolf talks about this a lot. Like there has to be a scapegoat to make other people feel more superior and feel like we should be fighting against each other instead of coming together and working together.
Right.
There's a question here. Yasmin said, or a statement, Yasmin said, Ethiopia is one of the biggest, if not one of the only headquarters for the African Union, the one that Gaddafi was bringing together. It's no coincidence what's happening.
Yeah. By the way, she's right. The African Union used to be. So there was a split with the African Union. There was one faction that wanted to actually unite all countries. There was another faction that wanted to just basically be the water carriers for Europe. Guess which faction won out? So AU, the way it stands now, is not the AU that Haile Selassie was thought about. And that's why, and she's right about Gaddafi. Gaddafi was actually trying to pivot to a point of having one standard, like a money system for Africa. You see how that turned out for him. So it's the common theme. People that advocate unity get silenced immediately, right? Compare Fred Hampton to Obama.
Yep.
Or compare Fred Hampton to Ta-Nehisi Coates, right? Fred Hampton got killed, and he was brilliant. To be honest with you, the more I read about him, he was a soldier of peace and a soldier of depth in ways, even in a way that could see Malcolm X, because he figured that out at an early age. At 21, he sat down next to the Young Patriots organization, which today will be considered a white supremacist group, and said, listen, forget about our differences. And there's a picture of Fred Hampton next to, I think it was Fred Hampton, next to somebody from a YPO, Confederate flag on one side, Black Panther Party on the other side. They're saying, who cares about our differences? Let's work together, right? Can you imagine that these days, a Black Panther Party flag next to a Confederate flag? No, because they have us hating each other. But the point is, we should actually be working across the aisle with people that are completely opposite of us. as long as they're not advocating killing us, right? If a quote unquote white person says, I have pride in being white, I don't care. I have pride in being brown. You know what I'm saying? As long as he's not advocating anything that's harmful to me, if he has pride in himself, cool, no worries. And at the end of the day, our interest lies in working together. That's exactly what Fred Hampton figured out, and they killed him. Now compare that to Ta-Nehisi Coates, who makes millions of dollars working for the same quote unquote white supremacist institutions that he rails against. But because he rails against white people and white privilege, quote unquote white privilege, and becomes uber divisive, they pay him millions of dollars. Black Lives Matter compared to Black Panther Party. Black Panther Party were self-sustaining, self-sufficient, and they fed themselves. They decimated them. Black Lives Matter is all about grievance peddling. I'm sorry, it is. You know what I'm saying? And look what, because of that, corporate America loves that because it creates a blowback on the other side. You know, the key at the end of the day is unity, and before we even get to that point, self-sufficiency. Because you can't be united with others unless you're self-sufficient within yourself.
That's a good point. I would also add that with Black Lives Matter, I feel like that movement was co-opted by the establishment. Anytime I see a Cadillac commercial and they're like, advertising Black Lives Matter, I'm like, yeah, they're just trying to make money.
Right, of course. When Twitter gives you an emoji, that's when you know the whole thing's been compromised.
100%. Bay of Pig said, Are Russia and China playing this game in Ethiopia specifically? Is this like a proxy war for superpowers?
Yeah, I mean, look, Russia and China have interest in Ethiopia. So do the West, right? Specifically the UK and the US. By the way, as a side note, we like to think that the US is like the 800-pound gorilla. No, it's the UK. It's always been the UK. Money is the financial capital of the world is London, and where there's money, there's power. You know, so yeah, it's the UK that's been wagging the tail for a very long time. But yeah, Russia and China definitely have interest in Ethiopia as well, and it's been a proxy war for a long time. But I will say this: on a broader level, globally, there is no division. You know what Julian Assange showed us in Cablegate and all that kind of leaks that he revealed. Mm-hmm. That behind the scenes, Russia and the U.S. pretend like they're enemies, but they're working hand in hand together behind the scenes. They party together, they drink together, and who knows what else they do together. Because what links them is money. It's the same thing. China and the U.S. They beef in public, they hug in private. It's kind of like Republicans and Democrats. So in the end, if you really want to get down to the brass tacks of it all, follow the money, and the money will lead you to central banking. And when it comes to central banking, the whole world is tied in together. The People's Bank of China, I think that's what it's called. The European Central Banks, ECB, the Federal Reserve, which is against the Constitution and illegal and immoral. There's no charter for this. The Federal Reserve is the most anti-American thing I've ever heard of in my life. It's against the Constitution. They literally bought out, they enslaved the whole of America. You have an unelected banking cabal that have no accountability to the voters, that make decisions that are more powerful and more impacting than anything the government does. So you're looking in the wrong direction. Instead of fighting over quote unquote white privilege and fighting over whose lives matter, how about we focus on the central enemy? It's not the person next to you that's your enemy. Look up. It's always been like that. Oppression flows downward. I mean, it's not sideways.
So for those who don't know, Teddy and I actually did a roundtable recording on the platform Roundtable. I told you guys about this a while back. My site is up now, so I'll actually show that to you tomorrow night. But we did a recording on Roundtable about class and race, and it was a panel. And there was something that Teddy said that really resonated with me in reference to class and race. And I want everyone to pay close attention to this. One of the things that you mentioned was that even if you take away the race problem, you still have the class issue. Right. You'll still have division. And you gave the example of Ethiopia. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, in Ethiopia, we're all the same color, right? Yet we're butchering each other. Why? Because when you strip away the people's ability to work, to work with their hands, right, to be productive in life, to empower themselves, and you leave them impoverished and hopeless for the future, they will turn on each other. Like we kind of go back to our animal instincts, right? If people feel that there's hope, that they can provide for their children, that they actually have the opportunity for a better tomorrow, they won't be hating. They'll be too busy living life and enjoying the abundance of it to hate other people. Hatred, only for the most part, unless you're a sociopath, only comes when you feel hopeless and you feel defeated in life. So again, if America, you wiped out everyone else and just left us, quote unquote. I told you I don't like these labels. The black folks only. We will be at each other's throats. So address the class issue, or to be honest with you, address the economy of it all. Unless you address the economic inequalities that is bringing about racism, that is bringing about hatred and the blowback of it all, you're fighting the symptoms. This is what they brilliantly. That's why, for me, I'm against Black Lives Matter for this reason, because they take your eyes off the prize. They misdirect you. You know what I'm saying? That's why Patricia Cullors and the other two founders were paid millions of dollars. I consider them exactly what they are, sellouts. They're not revolutionaries. They're counter-revolutionaries. Focus on the problem. Malcolm X was directing people to the problem. He said Republicans are like wolves and Democrats are like foxes. They both eat you the same, right? And when he came back from Mecca, he said, actually, I'm not against white people. They loved him as long as he was saying white devil this, white devil that. The minute he came back from Mecca and said, actually, we're all in this together, bam. They loved Martin Luther King as long as he was talking about civil rights through the prism of color. They loved him. He was Time Magazine of the Year. The minute he changed and he became quote unquote radical and actually talking about universal justice and went to Memphis to unite quote unquote black and quote unquote white. I told you I hate these labels. Sanitation workers, bang, they shot him. So they learned. These politicians, these fraudulent activists learned immediately. Hey, listen, we either die standing up for unity or we could thrive dividing people. That's what we have now. We have AOC. You talked about AOC at the beginning, a divisive person. People that talk about left versus right, divisive. If you identify and defend the left and bash the right, if you identify with Democrat and bash Republicans, you're being divisive. You're doing the job of these same globalists that are destroying our lives. Stop looking at the life through the prism of our differences and realize that we're all in this together. A child in Atlanta, a quote unquote black child in Atlanta who's going to sleep hungry at night is in the same boat as a white child, a quote unquote white child in Ames, Iowa, who's going to sleep at. Would you, if you saw a child that was like starving on the side of the road, would you ask what color she is before you fed her? So then why are we looking at justice through the prism of color? How about the one thing that really matters? How about the one thing that really matters, which is our bloodlines? Our bloodlines matter. Our bloodlines goes, if you're a person of faith, it goes back to Adam and Eve. If you're not a person of faith, it goes back to the Big Bang. Either way, we all have the same blood in us. Focus on the blood, not the skin.
I hear you, but I think it's easier said than done in America just because of the history of this country. And
right.
Like I focus a lot on the class issue because it is a huge problem. Right. And I feel like Bernie Sanders, this was kind of like his big thing, right? Was focus on like the 99% of us versus the 1%, the big class issue. And I feel like he really woke me up to that. But at the same time, I also look at the injustices in the United States when it comes to the criminal justice system. And I look at how Black people and white people are treated in the criminal justice system. Right. And I've seen times where you can have a Black person, a white person have the same, criminal record, and the Black person will get a harsher penalty than the white person. And that is because we still have this mentality in this country that Black people are bad or that black is worse, right? And that goes back to the darkness and light phrase that you were talking about earlier. So I think in order to fix some of these things, we have to change the criminal justice system. We have to change policing in this country. And a lot of this goes all the way back to slavery. Because police patrols or policing in this country actually started with slave patrols. Right. So it's the history of this country is the reason why we have the injustices that we have. And it's unfortunate. If you go to a lot of other countries and people will say we don't have these issues in France, we don't have these issues in places like Germany, or
Right. But they
I
do.
have students that are from like South Korea. They're like, we don't have these issues in South Korea. I'm like, but you are also coming from a country where South Korea is like one of the most monolithic
Right,
countries in the world.
right.
So America is a melting pot.
Right.
So it's different when you're coming from a place where you are the majority. And in reference to when it comes to like black people, like in Germany, there are black people in Germany, but I think the difference is like when I lived there is that there are a lot of military bases. So my dad was in the military. So I think that we're used to seeing the American military there, that presence there. But again, even then, we are still kind of in an American community in that country. And I think that's a part that's often like left out sometimes.
By the way, I do not. Let me clarify one thing. I do not for a second minimize the horrific legacy of slavery, of generational oppression. Right, as a first generation Ethiopian, even I can never understand the full depth of horrors that African Americans have went through. Right, I know racism exists because I've felt it, but the blight of racism, the oppressive nature of institutional racism that has existed since the birth of this country, right? That has made certain people feel a certain way because of their skin color. I don't deny those things, right? In fact, I write about these things all the time. It's trauma is energy, and it gets passed down generation to generation, right? So the pains of your ancestors live on to this day, and until there's a full accounting, and until there's a full apology or amends of these things, not based on color, not because white people, but no, based on this country, right? Not, I don't blame white people for the sins of slavery, because during the same time that was going on, most white folks were poor and sharecroppers in the South. You had to focus like a laser on exactly where the issues stem from, right? It was the plutocracy back then in the North and in the South that were oppressing all. Of course, slaves were at the bottom of that rank, but right on top of them were poor sharecropper white folks that would make them 50 cents a day. Right now, that's way better than being whipped and chained and working for free and being hung. Right? When you talk about it, there's a rank in terms of oppression levels, right? So I don't deny these things, and we have to understand. But what I don't like is when those things get weaponized and blamed collectively on people that are not necessarily responsible for these things. Because if you really want to make headway, you have to have a coalition, right? A coalition that involves all. If not, if we're divided, where 65% of this country is quote unquote white, and they feel like they're being excluded and marginalized, you'll have some that will come over on your side out of guilt and shame, and you have many that will go to the Trump side. But if you actually say, listen, this is what I've been through, I'm not blaming you. This is where my pains are. And to be honest with you, in a way, my pains are your pains too. Like, weave in your pains with somebody else. They will understand. They will come over to your side. They'll become full allies, embrace you, because they feel like their pains are being, heated, and they will listen to yours as well. Versus, you have white privilege, and I'm in pain. The defensive nature of folks are like, let me give you an example. In Ethiopia, Amaras, which is the ethnic group I kind of identify. I mean, look, I'm part Amara, I'm part Tigrayan, right? But for the most part, people identify me as Amara. It is what it is. So Amaras are being vilified as the quote unquote white people of Ethiopia. Now, I'm very empathetic to the plight of Oromos, who have been, in fact, marginalized in the past, the plight of Tigrayans, who have been marginalized. But the minute they say Amaras are like the white people, or y'all are privileged, nope, I don't pay attention anymore. You just lost me. You know what I'm saying? Why? Because Amaras were struggling too. Being born Amara did not mean anything. It was all about class in Ethiopia, right? You had rich Amaras, you had rich Oromos, and rich Tigrayans. So in the same way, being born white in America is not an automatic privilege card. It's not. It's offensive. Do you understand how many? Not you, it's a bit savvy, but do you understand how many white folks are on welfare in the Appalachians? And people say, well, if they want to, they can get out. No, they can't. You have no idea what poverty is like. I was homeless for 2 years. When you're homeless, that's not a choice at some point. You become institutionalized to these things. So when a child is born into homelessness and dies in homelessness, it's not because they choose to be there. That's because that's all they know. So in that way, being poor is just as hard as being black in America. You know what I'm saying? So it's all about messages so that you're not blaming. You're actually saying, this is why I'm, instead of saying you have white privilege, how about we just say we're disadvantaged? That way, you're not blaming other people. You're explaining what the disadvantage is, and you're extending a hand of allyship and saying, let's work on this together. Or we keep going around saying white privilege, and assigning supremacy based on a color. What? Obama's not a white supremacist? You know what I'm saying? You know how many people he killed in the continent of quote unquote Africa? He used to be called, the whole continent used to be called Ethiopia. You know how many people brown people he killed in Somalia, in Libya? So being white, black doesn't, I don't even use quote marks with him. That doesn't mean he's not a supremacist, or how about, I don't know. It's funny. If Clarence Thomas was president and he did what he did, people would call him a racist. But because he's a Democrat and a liberal, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're shadow boxing ourselves. We're letting these labels get in the way of justice. That's what's happening, to be honest with you.
So one thing I will add, I do agree. Like if you're poor in this country, like you will struggle. It's really hard to get out of poverty. But one thing I will add is that even if you're a white person and you're poor, I'll go back to Michelle Obama's book about her experiences like growing up Southside Chicago, like what her dad went through being a part of the union. One of the things that she pointed out in the book, and I'm not praising Michelle Obama by any means necessary, I just want to put that out there. But one of the things that she, I know, I was like, one of the things I got to point out is she talked about like how, the Great Migration, when blacks moved from the South to cities like Chicago and Baltimore and to get work, right? Because that's where a lot of the factories were at that time. Right. One of the things she talked about was what a lot of blacks found when they moved to those cities is that, yes, they were able to get those factory jobs. But what they found is that when it came to the unions, that white people in the unions were still paid more than black people were in those unions. And that sometimes black people or black workers couldn't even join the union. So there's still like those disparities. So yes, they both may be poor and deal with those struggles, but at the same time, you still have those disparities where a white person may be paid more just because they're white, and that still happens today. And this goes beyond race. It happens with gender. I see it all the time where men are paid more than women.
But this is why I was closing my mouth when it comes to Michelle. She's not. It's very brilliant what she's doing, and not cunning. Why is she not talking about the fact that these corporations are the ones that's doing this, right? Why are we taking our eyes off the prize or the misprize, I guess, whatever you want to call it, or off the malice, which is the fact that these corporations. So we're fighting about, okay, I get paid a crumb a day, you're getting paid 5 crumbs a day, so I'm pissed off at you because you're eating 5 crumbs a day. And I'm eating 1. At the end of the day, we're both starving. We're both malnutritioned, but I'm 1/5 as crummy as you are. Right? Why are we focused on what? Why? Why not focus on the fact that we're getting crumbs off the table? If we unite, we could own the table. We could own the bread factory. Why are we focusing on the fact that white people are getting more crumbs than us? Why are we fighting over crumbs? And that's why Michelle is a best-selling author, because she's not going to be brave enough to talk about the fact that the reason that we're getting crumbs, all of us, is because of this global theft. It's a global pyramid scheme where money is literally being choked upwards, right? Trickle up? No, it's trickle up. I mean, trickle down? No, it's trickle up, I mean, right? So imagine a meat grinder. We're at, quote unquote, black folks are at the bottom of the meat grinder. We're getting grounded to dust. But you have white folks being grounded to dust there too, right? Then you have, if we just talk about like percentages, preponderance of who gets it worse. Then you have Latinos right on top of us. Then you have, but guess what? We're all in the meat grinder. You know what I'm saying? So why don't we work together to get us out, excavate ourselves out of the meat grinder, instead of, I don't know, like a crabs in a barrel, we're pulling each other down and saying, you come down here with me. I will need you to feel my pain, instead of saying, let's pull each other up. You know what I'm saying? Like, it makes you, when you really pause and just kind of think about it, that's what Michelle's advocating. That's what her husband was advocating. I don't care whether or not somebody's getting more crumbs than me. I want a bread loaf. And I want to know how I could get a bread loaf, not about who has more crumbs than me.
That's a good point. Now you sent me something that you had on Twitter. I want to share this with everyone, because I do know apparently there were snowstorms in Virginia, which is interesting. I'm outside of Boston, Massachusetts, and no snow, 19 degrees, but no snow, which is really interesting. But you sent me this tweet and it says Mayor Justin.net and CM at JChapman99.
Right.
The roads are abysmal. I witnessed hundreds of cars stuck in snow drifts while driving Uber. The roads in Alexandria are unplowed. What are we paying taxes for? Virginia needs a shakeup. We demand leaders who mean it when they say it. And here are the pictures here. Now, this is ridiculous.
Right.
How
Like,
are you going to
roads were
drive through
untouched.
that?
They were not. The road. There were literally thousands of cars that I saw on the highways, byways. And let me follow that up. This is what he sent me. The mayor responded. So first, the councilman responded, was basically dismissive, right? And then I followed up with the mayor, and he responded back and said, "Let me know which street you experienced a problem with." And then when I told him, he said, "Thanks. We'll check those areas out. At this point, our crews continue to work to get all primary roads passable, which they are not. That's a lie. Once those roads are done, they will focus on secondary and eventually residential streets. At this point, we still ask the folks to avoid travel." Which I responded to was, I had to work Uber because I had to work 2 jobs to make ends meet for my family right now. So unlike you, who gets to, I guess, apparently work from home and just chill, I had to go out into the streets. I have no choice. So
Right.
again, dismissive. This is how disconnected he is from reality, from our reality. There's the problem that we have with these politicians, the Democrats or Republicans. They have no idea what it's like to be us. They're paid handsomely by corporations, so they live in a bubble. And so when a voter airs his concern, they respond back with snark and dismissiveness instead of saying, and I told him, I said, next time just say, I'm sorry, we'll do a better job next time. That, even if you don't believe it, that's a better political decision for you, Justin. And it's funny, just a few minutes ago, somebody just tweeted me and said, Teddy, I can't believe how they are responding to you. They do this all the time, treat us like we're invisible. You should run for office, Teddy. I know how educated you are and how accomplished you are. Get elected so we can have a voice. And then he used I was using this before, my love for number 4 VA. I thought about running for office in the past, but there's just way too much stuff going on my plate right now. But yeah, maybe that's what we need to start doing. We need to stop voting for Democrats or Republicans and actually vote. So to be honest, one of the things I was considering is, even though I write a lot, I was thinking about like starting some type of advocacy to where we get independents elected in Congress, fully independent, refuse taking a penny from corporations, so that like the hashtag my love for VA, it's basically for Virginia. And imagine if we kind of multiply, replicate this everywhere. Imagine if we had 1 or 5 Congress people, right, that were fully independent, that were not indebted to any corporation, that refuse to take money from any corporations, and they don't play this identity politics BS. They actually listen to the pains of all people. Imagine how powerful that is in 2022, if literally the House of Representatives could be decided by 1 or 2 seats. You know what I'm saying? So can we please stop fighting each other and unite on that basis. So, like I said, if you watching this now or in the future, follow me on Twitter. I'm Teddy TEDDY_FIKRE. You'll see it on my screen name. And like I said, the hashtag is hashtag my love 4 VA. Get on that. Seriously, put pressure on these people. They only understand one thing: pressure, right? Not protest, not useless hashtags only. If that hashtag is not twinned with action, actionable, right? In war, if something is not actionable, it's useless, right? So unless there's a threat, and I don't advocate guns because a revolution of the gun is bankrupt. You see what it does? It revives the same thing that it replaces. Within a few years, you have the same thing. meet new king, same as old king. What we need is a revolution of the mind and of the heart, where we see each other not as enemies to be divided, like RFK said, but as friends and neighbors with a common purpose and a common walk. When we do that, then all these things that we see before us will melt away. And so we do that. What will happen to a 2021 was just an appetizer. There's more to come.
I agree. No, I talk about that a lot on this show, is that the two-party system is just corrupt. And like Democrats or Republicans, neither one of them are really going to try to help us because there's too much big money involved. And until you get the money out, nothing is going to change. So I definitely, advocate for people running third party or running as an independent. And that actually takes me into our next story, which this is a very interesting discussion. Now, this is between Chris Hedges, Kyle and Krystal. And now, so Chris Hedges was on Krystal and Kyle and Friends. Someone actually sent me this. I guess Vanguard talked about this. I'm just going to play 2 clips from this because I don't have a subscription to Krystal, Kyle and Friends. I don't have money to have these subscriptions. And there's something that Chris Hedges says here that I think everyone needs to pay close attention to. So there's 2 parts I want to play for you. The first part is about Bernie Sanders and the Democratic Party. And the second part is about third parties. And I want to say I'm very proud of Chris Hedges. I'm so glad that he said this because I feel like I've been screaming this at the rooftops for so long. So it's great to hear someone like Chris Hedges say the same thing that I've been advocating for. And I want to give a shout out to Battleborn Socialist. Thanks so much for the super sticker. Thank you so much. So I'm gonna go ahead and play this. I'm gonna mute my mic so I don't get an echo.
The Nixon thing was to set up this question, which has been bothering me. Whether it's the Nixon story, which really shows the power of bottom-up pressure, or the union stuff that we were just talking about, which again is bottom-up, or the civil rights movement more bottom-up. But you could also think of examples of the opposite in a sense, where you have these figureheads, you have these leaders who can sort of mobilize and channel the energy in very specific ways, whether it's Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Cesar Chavez. In 2016, Bernie Sanders sparked something and took that energy and was able to channel it and direct it and lead it in the proper direction. So do you think left-wing movements necessarily have to be bottom up, or is some semblance of a figurehead and leadership needed? And, I'm of the belief you actually need both of those things. I'm curious where you are on that.
No, it always has to be bottom up. I mean, history has shown that is the only way to affect change. Now, remember, the people who are in power write history, and they write a very distorted view of history to justify their own place in power. Antonio Gramsci, of course, is the best theorist on this. I would say that Bernie Sanders betrayed us. He led us down a cul-de-sac. He talked about a political revolution that ended as soon as Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden got the nomination. And we're not going to build, number one, a real political revolution during an election cycle. And we're certainly not going to build a political revolution by getting people to go out and vote for the Democratic Party leaders that are responsible for the deep betrayal and the rise of the corporate state. So I don't personally, I think Bernie is honest and decent, and I think his commitment to working men and women is real and has been true throughout his life. Whether he's just naive or politically astute because, of course, they'd destroy him. If he took on the Democratic Party establishment, he'd end up like George McGovern when he took on the animal ag industry, and they essentially drove him out of the Senate, and he was never elected to office again. Bernie knows that, and I think that's the kind of price he's willing to pay. He's not stupid, but he failed us. I mean, I was with Cornel West and I the Democratic convention when Clinton became the nominee. Were with a group, several thousand homeless, unhoused people in Philadelphia. We marched on the Wells Fargo Center. So we were actually outside the appropriately named Wells Fargo Center when a lot of Bernie delegates, I mean, a large number came out chanting, "This is what democracy looks like," and walked out while Bernie was giving his endorsement speech for Clinton. And Cornell, who's astute about everything, turned to me and said, "Bernie just missed his historical moment. He should have walked out with him."
So I'm gonna pop out here for just a second, and I'll come back to the second part that I want to show you. But Teddy, I want to get your opinion about that, because this is something I've been saying for a long time. Like, it's not a good idea to idolize a politician. I know that a lot of us were, really strong Bernie supporters. I was a Bernie supporter, loved Bernie Sanders. But I think that if you had like this Bernie could do no wrong, like attitude, if you thought that he was going to be the savior that was going to save us, I think it's really difficult for people like that to understand why so many of us are upset now, because you can't put all of your faith in a politician. And the fact that he was trying to create a movement through an election, well, that sounds great if the election works out and he wins. But nobody asked the question at the time, well, what happens to the movement if he loses? And then he lost. And now we have nobody leading this. The left is clearly divided, like, hello, amongst like other things. But there's nobody leading this movement. And it's like we don't really know where to turn. But I think it was foolish of us to put all of our faith in one person, thinking that he was just going to make this great change. And I'm guilty of that too. Like I thought Bernie was going to come, change. But the other thing that I want people to think about, and Compton J said this best when he said before, this is why you don't do political movements through a campaign and an election. And if you look at the civil rights movement, if you look at the women's rights movement, those were not attached to a campaign or an election. They were built with the people. It wasn't just Martin Luther King who did the civil rights movement. People mentioned MLK a lot. It wasn't just him. You know how many people were involved that made that happen?
Now, let me tell you, Bernie Sanders was, so my first bite of the apple was Obama. Actually, I say that Clinton was the original snake that sold me the apple, right? Obama was a charmer that made me bite again, right? And I said, never again. Bernie made me nibble, right? Until I realized, wait a minute. Wait, I'm doing it again. I'm about to fall for it again. And by the way, Abiy Ahmed of Ethiopia almost got me to nibble again as well. He actually did, right? This is how the intoxicating aspect of cults, right? Change will never come from the top, which is what Chris Hedges just said, right? And pumping new blood in a cadaver will not revive a body. The cadaver is the Democrat and Republican parties. You can put as much blood in them as you want. We are wasting your blood because the institution is owned, or the institutions are owned by they're corporations. Did y'all know that? Did you know that Democrats and Republicans are corporations? All right, they're literally the extension of Wall Street, right? So these corporations. How can you be anti-corporation when you're working for a corporation that is the Democratic Republican Party? So when you're a corporation, it's not the people that matter; it's the institution, right? And the institution will always co-opt and destroy. Either they will co-opt and commandeer the new blood, or they will destroy and kick out those who refuse to comply, aka Cynthia McKinney, right? So the mistake that a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters made is thinking that one man was going to be more powerful than an institution. Impossible, right? In a way, I don't blame Bernie, because if had he not complied, they would have destroyed him, right? So then you cannot put your faith in any politician that's advocating for Democrats or Republicans. they had to be fully independent, fully corporation, right? Which is kind of like this thing I'm kind of working towards now, right? We have to form our own institution, a fully independent, fully non corporate owned. Because when that happens, right? Let's say, for example, hypothetically, if I listen to the guy's advice and actually ran for office, I go to Congress. If I'm not owned by Wall Street, if I'm not working for either party, guess what that means? They'll see me as a rebel. But guess what we need more than anything else? A rebel in Congress. You know what I'm saying? Someone that says, no, that's not right. What were you doing? Right? And if they're doing something that doesn't smell the smell test goes right to the microphones. My fellow Americans, this is happening, right? We have like, in newspapers, you have an ombudsman, I think that's what they're called, like people that correct the record, fact checkers. Imagine having an independent fact checker in Congress, especially in Congress where it's almost evenly split. Imagine if Joe Manchin was independent as opposed to a Democrat, and how much power that independent would have. Imagine if Joe Manchin was not owned by Wall Street the way that he is, or by special interests, right? That would make him all powerful and all, and for us, for the people. That's what we need. We need a Joe Manchin who's not Joe Manchin, if that makes any sense. So in a way, Bernie Sanders was the antithesis of the 99% movement, right? Both things were just wrong, because the problem with the what's it called, the 99%? I forgot what they call it. The bottom 99%. I forgot what is that what the
99%,
right?
The 99%.
Yeah. The problem with that is it was anarchy. You had no leadership at all, right? When that happens, then the media will just go to any Joe Blow off the street and they will destroy it. Somebody that looks high, somebody that looks just completely disheveled. Oh, let's go interview him, right? But if you have someone that's actually in charge, that's articulate, that person can say, "What? That he does not represent this movement. I'm the person that's in charge. Talk to me." Right? And that way, this speaker of sorts could safeguard the organization, right? So Bernie Sanders could have been that had he formed. Imagine twinning Bernie Sanders, ethical, with the 99% movement, right? He's the figurehead of a fully independent, fully non corporate owned movement, powerful, right? Unfortunately, he decided to go to the cadaver, and the 99% percenters became a cadaver because they had nobody leading them. So again, you need to, and life is all about finding the middle road. You need to have a person at the top, or people at the top that will give guidance to their movements, but who are independent and who are not owned by Wall Street. And then you do need to have an organic movement at the same time as well. We have yet to get there. Maybe we'll get there in 2022.
Yeah, it's a good point. Thanks so much, Steve, for the super sticker. Thank you so much. Marcus has a good point here. He said most younger Black voters have no faith in elections fixing anything because they haven't in our lifetime.
Right. Well, he's right up to a point, but part of it is because we keep voting for, Einstein said, if you do the same thing expecting a different outcome is the definition of insanity. If you keep voting for Democrats or Republicans, they ain't going to fix something, right? So if you think that there might be a way through politics, it's by actually turning politics upside down, right? And that's by somehow getting people in Congress that are completely against the establishment, contrary to the status quo, right? Again, it goes back to completely independent, fully independent from Wall Street and from both parties, right? Refuse to take a penny from corporations. If we do that, by the way, we could do that. You know what Obama, how many millions of people gave small contributions to him? Problem with him is he was also taking billions of dollars from Wall Street, right? $200 million from Wall Street. He took their money and our money. That was a sucker bet for us. By the way, I just have to. I'm not some, we live in an age where you say you're not a Republican, that means you're a Democrat. No, You know what I'm saying? I'm not a liberal. That means you're a conservative? No. Like, stop looking at life through a binary. Like, yeah, it's like saying I don't like spinach. That means you like zucchinis? What? No, I just don't like spinach. You know what I'm saying? Like, so in that way, I was like I went to 16 states in 2008 to get Obama elected, right? Volunteered. I broke my back together. I wrote, you know, the South Carolina victory speech in 2008. The closing line is what I wrote. Literally, I wrote 4 paragraphs and sent it to Valerie. My fraternity brother in Chicago. He forwarded it to Valerie Jarrett and his sister. I think her name was Pamela. And next thing I know, he's speaking my words. That's how like this I was with this campaign. I used to talk on a daily basis with this constituency director. You know, I used to ghostwrite for Latinos for Obama, Muslims for Obama, all those things. It's not like I've always hated them. Even now, I don't think I hate Democrats per se. I'm awake to their games. It's lies. It's lies. You know, even back then, I ran to be a delegate for Obama in 2008. That was my first taste of the corruption of Democrats. You know, and I gave a rousing speech in Alexandria, and all of a sudden, people were like, "Whoa!" And I could see like there was a stir in the crowd. Unfortunately, I was against this thing. There was 8 people called the Kane slate, Tim Kaine. So these were the preferred candidates. So what they did is, the minute that they realized that I was getting a lot of votes, they started dropping off one after the other, consolidating their votes. The top 2 candidates ended up being both Tim Kaine candidates. The other 6 dropped off. This is how corrupt they are, yo. So this is, again, thinking you'll find a savior amongst crooks. You know what I'm saying? Like, at what it's been, how many years? How many more years do we have to go before we realize there's no redemption to be had from colonizers? We need to liberate ourselves.
Good points. I want to show this second part here because this is the part where Chris Hedges starts to talk about third parties. So pay close attention to this. Let me mute my mic really quick.
What should he have done, though? That's what I'm curious about.
So,
what do you think would have been ideal for him to do?
The only way is to.
I'm sorry, I have to jump in here. What should he have done? He should have done the right thing. Like, I'm sorry, that just drives me crazy. Like, no, you're not supposed to go along with the establishment. If you were going to do that, then what was the point of you trying to run as a progressive and create this movement that you abandoned? Like, I'm sorry, but this bothers me so much just to say that. Like, what should he have done? He should have done the right thing. Sorry, I'll go back into the video.
Is to build a political third party. Now, I say that I was Ralph Nader's speechwriter. I am fully aware of all of the obstacles thrown in front of third party candidates because I watched the Democratic Party do it to Ralph. And a lot of those tactics, of course, they used against Bernie. Without corporate money, neither Biden or Clinton would have gotten the nomination. Without the DNC working on behalf of first the Clinton and the Biden campaign, neither of them would have gotten the nomination. They have no real support. I think the thing is the Democratic Party, like the Republican Party, doesn't function as a real political party. The base has no say. You have the kind of political theater that they put on at convention time and everything else, but the base has completely been rendered impotent, has no real input into the celeb Biden. Who wants Biden? I mean, Biden was selected by all the Democratic donor class and Lloyd Blankfein, who were very upfront, by the way, and said that if Bernie was the nominee, they'd all vote for Trump. They weren't even hiding it. I think we have to be very wary of investing all of our hopes in a particular political figure. There's a great story about the Wobblies, the old radical union organizers, anarchists. I kind of am partial to anarchists, and they carried out all these dock strikes on the West Coast, quite successful, shutting down ports until they got union contracts. And the San Francisco, I think it was San Francisco, called out their cops were beating all the dock workers. And so a bunch of wobblies got on a boat from Portland or somewhere, LA or somewhere, and showed up at the docks. And they're coming off the gangway, and the cops are beating them, and goes, "Where's your leader? Where's your leader?" And one of the wobblies said, "We're all leaders." I think, there is no Messiah. And investing hopes in a Messiah, whoever that Messiah is, throughout history, I think, has shown that it's that Messiah can often become as egregious a figure in terms of suppression or control as the one that was overthrown or replaced. We have to build powerful popular movements that are always antagonistic to power, no matter who has power, to hold them in check.
And there you go.
There's a reason why I like Chris Hedges, and again, it goes back to what happens to people when they start speaking the truth. Chris Hedges is a prime example. A Pulitzer Prize winning, astounding writer who came out ahead of his time and said there's something wrong with the Iraq War. They drummed him, like it goes back to the New York Times, and them writing what's wrong with Ethiopia, whatever, when they're the main ones that's doing this. Like at the end of the day, if you really want to look, I'm not trying to be antagonistic, or maybe I am. If you want to look at enemy, might be a little too harsh of a word, but what the problem in America is, even above and beyond politicians, it's the media. This corporate media, where 6 companies own upwards of 95% of the information that we consume. If you add Google and YouTube on that and social media, 8 companies that pretty much own 100% of everything that we consume. We've become a slave to this. Google, there's been shown, can swing an election by upwards of 10 to 15 points. They're the kingmakers. Based on whether or not they elevate or suppress, it's too much power, yo. And if you really want to understand, if you really want to know how we can get America, don't want to sound like Trump. If you really don't want to know how to make America great again, which it's not anymore, sadly, we've become the backwaters of globalists, and you're looking at homelessness teeming up throughout every city and state, economic inequalities that match what happened during the French Revolution. Only reason that we're not so concerned about it is because we're not homeless. But yet, as I was homeless for 2 years. I went from working at Booz Allen Hamilton, making 6 figures, to homeless, where all of us are 1 or 2 missed paychecks away from that plight. All of us, So America, we've gone from America, the shining city on a hill, which for a lot of people maybe it wasn't, but at least there was a level of opportunity back then. Our parents' generation, you go to college, you come out, you're guaranteed a job you can retire to. Now, I have an MBA from Johns Hopkins University. I'm driving an Uber to supplement my income. How do we get here?
Yep.
How?
Yep.
So in this way, if you really want to know how to make America great again, we have to find a way to dismantle Wall Street, and if not, dismantle these huge corporations like Google, like Amazon. And you don't have to do it through force. You can do it by choice. Choose to shop differently, but you can do it by force too. The government has a mandate where if a company has a monopoly, they're supposed to break them up. They used to do that back in the day, right? They did that to AT&T. They did that to Verizon. So you know what happened though? These corporations are now funding governments, so they're not going to do it. So Google has a monopoly through and through. Amazon has a monopoly. Comcast has a monopoly. Pfizer has a monopoly. And you see what's going on with Pfizer. That's a discussion for another day. So our politics, our policies are being driven and determined by Wall Street, and we have no say.
No.
This is not if we don't put a stop to this, we're not that far from literally becoming. Look, up until now, they needed labor, right? From the time of Industrial Revolution to now, they needed workers. Now we're entering into what's called the 4th Industrial Revolution, right? Where instead of service sectors, now robots could do the jobs that we're doing. Guess what that means? They don't need us. You know what happens to people when they don't need them? And how do you mitigate the risk of people not revolting? Figure that out and connect the dots to what's taking place right now at this exact moment where we're being forced to take things that we don't want to. A lot of us don't want to. So again, before we keep going down that path, let me tell you the difference between the rich, the poor, the working class, and the middle class versus the plutocracy. They plan 20 years out. We react day to day.
Yep.
People that plan 20 years will always defeat people that react day to day. So how about we start looking with a vision outward instead of reacting to the catnip that mainstream media, corporate media is giving us on a daily basis to distract us from the real mission at hand, which is unity in order to defend our collective interests.
Thank you so much for the super chat, Marcus. Keep up the good convos, Sabby. Thanks so much, Marcus. Gamer for Life says, yep, Kyle still believes the Dem Party can change. Yeah, right. Yeah, it's just the only thing I can say to people is I know sometimes people hear me say this a lot and they're like, you're being pessimistic. No, I'm being a realist. And the reality is, like, the two-party system, they're not going to change. Guys, they've been doing this for how long? Don't you think people have tried to get them to change before? So when people say we have to put in more like progressives in Congress and that will create change, it's as long as the money is there, it's not going to change. And that's something that we learned from Bernie Sanders. So we need to remember that we are the 99% and we are not the top 1%. And as long as we are not the top 1%, we really don't have a say unless we go out and we fight for it. But if we keep voting Democrat, keep voting Republican, nothing is ever going to change. Now they'll do just a little enough. They'll give us crumbs. They'll give us these little small wins. They'll let us have a little bit, but they'll never let us get a big enough win to where it like seriously changes our lives for the better. They give us just enough so that we can get by, not so that we can get ahead. And it's really important for people to understand that if you don't get the money out, nothing is going to change.
By the way, it's like this. I hope this doesn't sound gratuitous, but it's kind of like an abusive husband, right? Beats the heck out of his wife and comes back and gives her roses. And she says he's going to change. Look, he bought me roses. That's what Democrats and Republicans do. They beat the hell out of you for 3.5 years. Election comes, they give you token hope and change, rhetoric. That's the roses. Oh,
that's changed. A good analogy, Teddy.
They've changed, right? They've changed. Look, AOC, that's change. AOC is the rose who ends up becoming a thorn. Bernie is the rose petal that becomes a thorn. The minute they get in office, they withdraw the rose, they give you the thorn. At what point will you stop rationalizing abusive spouses and saying, well, they're abusive, I need a divorce? Let's divorce ourselves from Republicans and Democrats and declare our independence once and for all in 2022.
Agreed. That takes me to our last story, which is AOC meltdown.
Right.
So this happened. I'm not here to say people should not go on vacation. I'm not here to say that at all. I will say that there appears to be some hypocrisy here.
No, you don't say.
I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna go ahead and play this video, and then I'm gonna show you her response, AOC's response to this as well. So let me mute my mic for a second.
But not for me took off in 2021. Over the past year, top Democratic leaders came under fire for breaking their own COVID rules while pushing mandates onto the American people. Squad member AOC now joining the list of COVID hypocrites after she was captured maskless, enjoying a cocktail in Miami, Florida. Critics blasting the far-left progressive for whining and dining as New York faces record high numbers of COVID cases. Let's bring in Charlie Hurt, opinion editor for the Washington Times and Fox News contributor. Charlie, great to see you. This is rich, isn't it? AOC jetting off to Florida, sans mask, drink in hand on Miami Beach after criticizing the state for more lax COVID rules than her state of New York. The Republican governor there, Ron DeSantis, who she has called out many times, had this to say on Twitter. He said, "Welcome to Florida, AOC. We hope that you are enjoying a taste of freedom here in the Sunshine State. Thanks at Ron DeSantis. Oh, thanks to at Ron DeSantis's leadership."
Okay, and now I want to show you guys her response to what Ron DeSantis tweeted, because that's pretty interesting too. So I'm gonna share my screen here. Okay, so here's the tweet that he sent. "Welcome to Florida, AOC," that you just saw in the video. And she responded, "Hasn't Governor DeSantis been inexplicably missing for like 2 weeks? If he's around, I would be happy to say hello. His social media team seems to have been posting old photos for weeks. In the meantime, perhaps I could help with local organizing. Folks are quite receptive here." That's really interesting when she mentions like local organizing, because just recently Status Quo interviewed Amazon protesters in New York, and AOC was supposed to come help them with the protests, and she was supposed to give her support. In the last minute, she bailed. So it's really interesting. You want to brag about some type of organizing and you bailed on people in your own city. It's hilarious to me. I have another article that I want to show about this as well, because again, it's just to show you guys the hypocrisy. Again, even if it wasn't AOC, I would still be criticizing this, because honestly, I'm getting really tired of it. Rashida Tlaib was caught doing the same thing after she criticized people, not wearing masks, and then she was seen partying up at the same weekend at a wedding. It's different rules for different people, right? So it says AOC caught maskless again in Miami drag bar as Omicron cases skyrocket. And it says here, Omicron has been a drag for New Yorkers, but not for Representative AOC. The far left, that's funny. The far left lawmaker was spotted maskless once again in Florida, this time at a packed drag bar in Miami, as the Big Apple continued to be hammered by record high numbers of the 19. FYI, Teddy, I have to call it that because of YouTube. And faces indoor mask mandate for 1 more month. In the video posted by a reporter for the Sunshine State's conservative voice on Sunday, the Democratic darling is seen waving to the large crowd of mostly unmasked drag bargoers. AOC is still lounging it up in Florida in large crowds and maskless, the reporter who initially posted the video to social media. This time at a drag queen bar in Miami, rules for thee, but not for me. For those of you with zero sense of humor, the whole point of this post is to expose hypocrisy. We don't actually care that she's maskless. We care she fearmongers about Florida, but then she has the audacity to vacation here.
Yeah.
Teddy, I want to get your take on this.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been writing about C9, C19 for a while, right? I said this almost from the outset. Well, I'll take it back. Since first and foremost, my mom died from COVID. My mom died from C19. So I don't dismiss this. I know how horrific it is, and the numbers of people that died from it. But there has to be some level of rationality to this, and that's rationality is missing from the public discourse about this at all. The chances of people passing away who are about young and relatively healthy is pretty much zero. And people, if you look, that almost all the people that have passed away from it are either elderly, 60, 65 or above, or pre-existing conditions. For the rest of it, I caught it too in February and recovered. I got tested recently. I have antibodies. I've been around folks that had it actively at that time, and nothing happened to me because I have antibodies. I've been about this extensively. And remember when the whole conversation first started, they said take it in order to end the pandemic. Now they're saying take it because And we're trying to make sure that the health system is not over. There's a shift in conversation, okay? But if I've been talking to a lot of people that have been injected, almost all of them that are catching this supposed Omicron are injected. I have yet to talk to one person who has natural immunity that has caught it. This is the biggest lie in the history of humanity. I can't think of a bigger one that has led to countless hundreds of thousands, millions, no, countless millions of people. Actually, I don't know what the last count is. So over 130 million, I think, to involve themselves in a medical experiment without consent. This is what Nazi doctors got hung for, by the way, without giving informed consent to people. You know, there was an article I wrote where Dr. Malone came out there and said that there's a threat of ADE. I've been writing about antibody-dependent enhancement. I've been writing about this for a while. What we could be seeing right now pretty much could be ADE, or antibody-dependent enhancement, where when you get injected, what happens is your immune system gets co-opted in a way. It gets corrupted to only look out for one thing, as opposed to your natural immune system being kind of agnostic, right? And now it trains it for one thing as opposed to many things. So what happens when there's a variant? Well, you get it, right? And so the people that create vaccines a long time ago have been saying there's always an arms race between vaccine and virus, right? That's why you had to have a different flu shot, every year.
Right.
At least with the flu shot, it has not been proven to be deadly. This one kind of has been proven to be deadly, or at least there's a big question mark, right? So for something where 99.66% of people that get it survive, why are you forcing something upon yourself? There's a question mark, So in that way, the hypocrisy of the left and the right is astounding to me, because Fox News, as much as they rail against the mask, they don't talk about the vaccine, right? So again, this is this left-right divide that's a lie. They're both owned by corporations like Pfizer, and there's billions of dollars to be made. What they give you for free will come shortly with a fee. I wrote about 6 months ago that what Bill Gates is behind the whole thing, by the way, that
Of course.
Bill Gates' policy, right? Bill Gates has made his billions of dollars by basically giving you a flawed PC. And then every year you had to get an upgrade. Every 6 months you had to get a new license to implement some type of a software scan, whatever, right? So he turns you into a customer for life. They have now turned human beings into operating systems. Every 6 months you had to get a booster. You understand what that's doing? They're not owning you. They're owning the human body. And if you don't get upgraded with the computers, you had the blue screen of death. Now, if you don't do it with this booster, you might end up getting a blue screen of death too. And so think twice, yo. And there's a reason why they're forcing this upon people the way that they are. Once you get over 80%, 70 to 80%, you could abuse the rest. That's what happens. That's what happened in Germany. You had to have a critical look. In Germany, what happens is initially you had 1/3 that were Nazis, 1/3 that were ambivalent, 1/3 that were socialists. Hitler said, "Give me to 66%, I will own the whole country." So he went after the socialists and the communists. He eviscerated them, right? You know what happens? Now the 1/3 that were ambivalent, then now they're going to fold. And he got to 66%. That's why they're trying to get to 66% of people to get injected, because the other 1/3 will fold. And if they don't fold, they're going to, who knows, round them up and do whatever. People always think that what happened in Germany was an outlier. It's not. In Ethiopia, at the same time, my ancestors were getting blown apart and killed. Upwards of 1 million Ethiopians were eviscerated by mustard gas, by Italy, by Mussolini, the unknown Holocaust. These things are not unique. They happen a lot in history. It happened in China. It happened in Russia. Oh, it happened in America. Look at what happened to Native Americans and to African Americans that came here. There's a Holocaust against both. We're not going to acknowledge those two. And what happens all the time is when people are divided, and when you make it into us versus them, horrors take place. only way to overcome us versus them is to say we the people.
Thank you so much, Delthea Simmons, for the super chat. AOC is not far left. She's left, but not too much. Wouldn't want too much left politics to clash with her Met Gala gown. Thank you so much for the super chat, Delthea Simmons. I do want to add in here because I do want to make sure I'm being fair here. From what I understand, and I need to find a source to back this up, but from what I understand, Ron DeSantis' wife is going through cancer. I believe she had like chemo. That's why he was not present, from what I understand. So I do want to make sure that I put that out there. Yeah. So for me, it's not the problem that she went to Florida. Like, I don't care that she went to Florida, but I do understand the hypocrisy. It's like you're going to, shame him about his policies with this in Florida for like the whole freaking year, basically. But then you go down there, you're doing the same thing. So it's like, you want those heavy mandates implemented in New York, but we see you in photos and videos dancing around in Florida without one on. So it's the hypocrisy. And again, it's different rules for different people. And it's ridiculous. One of the things too that was mentioned by Joe Biden in the beginning when he told employers that they needed to require this, right? What was interesting to me is that it wasn't required for Congress. Like, they didn't have to do it.
Yeah.
So again, different rules for different people. That doesn't make any sense to me. And if whether you are, pro jab or anti jab or somewhere in the middle, if you don't see that there are different rules here for different people, then we have a bigger problem than I imagined.
Yeah. But by the way, if you vote for a law that you exempt yourself from, that is the essence of corruption. That's exactly what corruption is, And when it comes to this, look, in 1976, CDC back then said, "Oh my God, it's H1N1. No, swine flu, I think it was. We have to get everyone to be vaccinated, right? 40 million people got vaccinated. A year later, 400 million people, 400 people end up developing what's called a Guillain-Barré. It's a syndrome. They yanked it. They said it's unsafe, and this vaccine was unsafe. 2009, Fauci said, "Oh my God, H1N1, we had to get everyone vaccinated." Yep. 80 million people got vaccinated with this experimental jab called a Pandametric, I think it's called. And again, within a year, it was proven to be unsafe. They pulled it off the market. How many times does Lucy keep having to pull the football before we realize she ain't gonna keep it there where we line up to kick it? Well,
like the Charlie Brown reference.
Seriously, what the problem is? They're talking, all right? We hear them loud and clear. Well, we're talking, they hear wah 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 wah.
No, it's so
they're
true.
not listening to us.
Oh man. There's a question for you here from Justin that says, Teddy, did you vote for Princess Blanding?
I would say no, because I don't know who that is.
Yeah, she ran under the Liberation Party for governor of Virginia.
No, I didn't. Let me tell you, I've been so disgusted with this whole thing, right? So, like, for me, I'm beginning to see. I kind of withdrew from voting out of protest, right? Because these two parties have a stranglehold, and I was like, "What's the point?" But now I'm kind of reassessing and thinking maybe what if, right? And it's not. But look, if there's going to be you can't do a third party, because that third party will become a faction. A faction will become corrupt, just the same. It has to just be a collective of independent individuals, independent of party. Their party is what corrupts them, right? Let's say I start a political party. We'll call it, I don't know, the Teddyists, right? And then there's 70 people that become Teddyists in Congress. I'm telling you, within short order, we're going to start looking about, well, how can we expand our vote? How can we expand? Oh, we need money for this. It starts corrupting you. That's what consolidated power does. So if there's going to be it has to be a bunch of individual, independent candidates, independent of any party affiliation. So no, I'm not voting for anyone that's affiliated with a party, because you're just waiting. So you're gonna Get rid of Democrats to get a Green Party. Green Party become the new Democrats.
Mm.
You know, so independence. Vote for people based on the merit of their ideas, not based on the cult or the gang that they belong to.
Yeah, because what happens a lot of times, and we saw this with Bernie Sanders, right? Like Bernie Sanders is an independent, but he ran through the Democratic Party. At the end of the day, Bernie Sanders put the party's needs before his own.
All the
So
time.
he was loyal to the Democratic Party, even though he's an independent.
Right. And that's what happens all the time. So look, the problem is they go in there and they caucus with these parties. You don't have to caucus with them. Be a free agent. You become more powerful that way. But these politicians, they go to DC and they let ego and their aspirations determine that becomes their moral compass, because they know that the only way that they could get ahead and become a chair of this thing or chair of that thing is if they caucus with the Democrats. Right? No. It's to put your ego aside. Go there to be, I don't know, a flamethrower. to be a boat rocker. Don't go there because out of pure opportunism, because you want to become the chair of the Ways and Means Committee. No, go there to expose the utter corruption of what's going on in DC. You want to know how to clean up a DC? Send a truly independent person that's not affiliated with any party, that doesn't take a penny from corporations. When that happens, man, it's like back in the day. When a castle was under siege, they would fling a diseased cow into the castle, because it would just that disease would just proliferate. Well, at this one, imagine the cow is penicillin and the disease is the U.S. Capitol. Fling a penicillin into the Capitol and see what happens.
There is a question here. I'm not familiar with this person, but you may be Teddy. Whatever man said, Sabby Sabs, can you get Ethiopian Harmela Aragawe also to speak on this? She's done amazing work. I will look into that, whatever man.
I have no comment. Let me tell you, okay, blue check mark individuals, they sit up here and they say one thing. I will tell you a little bit about Harmela. She was as pro TPLF as you could get, as pro TPLF, right? TPLF is the terrorist group that started this war to begin with, which Abiy Ahmed was a part of. Abiy Ahmed was TPLF himself, right? And then they kind of had a falling out with her, and now she flipped. Not because she saw the light or because she has a message of unity. No, because she got pissed off that they attacked her. And if you look at her core message, it has nothing to do about creating unity in Ethiopia, holding the Abiy government or the TPLF junta and accountable. It's all about pointing fingers without any solution. And to be honest, what's going on right now with the No More Movement is this: they're vilifying the West, right? Which I as you see, I'm not necessarily, I'm criticizing them for what they're doing, right? Rightly criticizing, but what they're doing is they're giving a pass to Abiy Ahmed. What this whole No More Movement is all about is really as a Ethiopian government and Eritrean government movement, funded and operated by them, because it's a way, again, you create a bogeyman so that you don't hold the government accountable. And the Ethiopian government and the Eritrean government are being funded by the West anyways. Look, again, people that have 20-year visions and mission statements will be able to checkmate you all the time. They have us playing checkers thinking that we're playing chess, and so Harmela is no different. And like I said, they don't give you blue checks for a reason. I'll just put it that way.
I don't know about that one, whatever, man. But last question here, because it's around 8:30 and I gotta head out soon. Teddy, do you think electoralism would be a better option if the GOP and the Dems were ejected from our body politic, or if parties were banned outright?
I think
Thanks so much,
parties are the issue. Like George Washington, a lot to be said about him. But one thing I do agree with him, factions are the death of America. Political parties are factions. So you replace Democrats, Republicans with unicorns, the Unicorn Party and the Princess Party. Same thing, right? So the answer is to get rid of parties, and vote for people based on the merit of their ideas, the merit of what. Vote people for people on what they believe and stand for, not based on the brand that they have. That's how we make progress in America. True progress, not progressivism, but progress.
That's a good point, because I remember like when I played sports, I don't know if any of you in the chat played sports, but one of the things my coach used to say is that we have to do what's best for the team. It's not always about
Right.
the individual. You get what's good for the team. And it's true. So like with political parties at the end of the day, they're going to do what works for the party.
Yeah. They even say, hey, be a team player, right? So you know what? We the people need a team of the people, right? We become the team. So, but it's crazy. What we are now? We're fans voting for team players who are owned by owners. How does that working out for us? We're clapping on the outside. The team players are making millions of dollars, just like the NFL players, and the owners are making billions of dollars. Meanwhile, we're paying for tickets. That's what politics is.
Another good analogy. Man. Oh my gosh, Teddy, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you. I mean, I really enjoyed this conversation. Like I said, I'm really like this guy who tweeted me has me thinking. I was like, what if? But maybe in future life, maybe I'll entertain the idea. But I'm going to get behind this whole like my left for VA thing and trying to see this idea. This conversation is pretty awesome. It has the mental juices kind of flowing right now. Like, what can we do to actually bring about a platform or a movement where it's truly independent candidates, and there are independent political parties, and independent of Wall Street, where we can prop them up, and they don't, kowtow or play footsies with identity politics. They're all about universal and inclusive justice. So I'm going to start thinking about that. I write a lot, by the way. I write at what's called the Gion. I used to write at the Gion, GHION journal.com. I started a new venture called Guzo, GUZO number 2, and then healing.io. So you can catch me there, and also on Twitter. So I'm gonna sleep on it and see what I could come up with. But at the end of the day, whoever it is, we need to start identifying people that could actually go against the grain instead of turning us into dust. So that's what I'm going to be thinking of. So if you have any ideas or thoughts, hit me up on Twitter, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. All right, guys, you know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.
Thank you.